USA All-American Halftime Show. From powerhouse vocalist Natasha Owens, known for standout singles like Trump One and Somali Waltz, comes her brand new release, The Boss, released on Real America's Music. This is the direct response to Bruce Springsteen's recent release, The Streets of Minneapolis. While Springsteen once branded himself as a voice of the working class, The Boss gives a voice to everyday Americans and reminds listeners who truly shapes the future. The Real America's Voice audience has the power to move charts and shake the industry. Download it right now. Scan the QR code or search The Boss on iTunes. Push it up the charts. Make them notice.
Thank God you're not. Thank God you're
Welcome back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. While Congress has about a week left to hash out funding for the Department of Homeland Security and by extension ICE, Republican lawmakers are continuing to push to make your neighborhood safer. Real America's Voice congressional correspondent Benny Ray Harmony discussed the matter with Florida Congresswoman Kat Cammack.
How can we be deterrent to stop the trafficking of drugs and individuals into the United States? On the back end, cleaning up Biden's mess, we saw millions and millions of illegals cross over, many of whom had criminal records. But what has been absolutely crazy to me is that we have been hearing stories all around the United States in cities and departments that you have sworn officers that are non-citizens. They are illegals. They are carrying guns and they are tasked with upholding the law. Now, I don't know about you, but as a citizen, I find it pretty scary that an illegal has arresting authority over me. And so we have introduced the COP Act, Citizens Only Police, and we are pushing for that to hit the floor because no illegal should be in law enforcement. You broke the law, you shouldn't be tasked with upholding it then.
How are you guys combating that border crisis here in Congress?
Well, certainly President Trump has locked the border down. He has taken it from an extreme high to record lows. And I can't say enough good about what President Trump has done in securing the border and trying to stop that flow. But as we know, these cartels, these narco-terrorist cells, they are incredibly creative. So we know that the drugs are landing in cities all around America. Every town in America has become a border town thanks to Joe Biden. In my own district, we had bricks of fentanyl with the stamp of border cartels that were found, and enough fentanyl in one brick was enough to kill everyone in my particular county 10 times over. That is how incredibly pervasive this issue is and how it has impacted every single American across the country. You have, at one point in time, 100,000 Americans that were being poisoned to death by fentanyl. Now, that equates out to about 300 a day. Imagine an airliner dropping out of the sky every day. There would have been flights grounded by the end of the week. There would have been a task force to figure out what's going on. But because this was deliberate, there was an open border policy by the Biden administration, they wanted to look the other way. And as a result, Americans died. We have to address the magnets, right? The narco-terrorism networks, they are fueled by both the drug sales and the benefits and profits that come with that, but they're also engaged in the human trafficking element. And so we have to cut off the magnets that are drawing people to the United States. All the freebies, all the things that people are saying, listen, this is what we're going to go to the United States and we're hearing that we're going to get all this free crap. And it's true, under the Biden administration, there was a system set up for that. But we also need to put in place the systems that will support people who are dealing with addiction. We have to tackle a lot of these elements that are really pushing the drug trade. I think Snapchat is a huge part of kids getting a hold of drugs. That is something that we know to be true. So we have so many things that we've got to block and tackle, but it is a process and we're fully engaged.
That was RAV congressional correspondent Benny Ray Harmony talking with Florida Congresswoman Kat Cammack. Advertisers are ruling out or pulling out, all the stops to win Sunday's Super Bowl commercial sweepstakes. Getting the attention of 120 million viewers is at stake. Celebrities ranging from Kendall Jenner to George Clooney to the iconic Budweiser Clydesdales will be featured in ads this weekend. Expect to see lots of ads for AI and tech companies this year. Telehealth and weight loss drugs will also be featured pretty heavily. Last year, a record 127.7 million people watched the big game. On average, 30-second spots cost about $8 million. Some spots we're hearing will be upwards of $10 million. President Trump's accounts for newborns and young children continue to gain more private support. The latest company to join the effort is Wall Street giant Citi. Citi says it will match the federal government's initial $1,000 seed money for its U.S.-based employees. Eligible accounts will be for young kids born between January 1st of last year and December 31st of 2028. In its note to employees, Citi writes, and this is a quote, "These accounts are intended to promote long-term savings from a young age and provide children with investment assets that will grow over time." That's a quick check of your headlines.
This is a monumental moment in American culture. This Sunday, Real America's Voice and Real America's Music come together to do what the mainstream industry won't. Take the music back. Starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, we go live with exclusive pre-coverage of the Turning Point USA All-American Halftime Show, a patriotic alternative. For years, the left has weaponized the music industry, using it to push politics, erase values, and divide the country. That ends now. This All-American Halftime Show exists to celebrate American pride, traditional values, and artists who still stand with the heartland. Featuring Kid Rock, Brantley Gilbert, Lee Brice, and Gabby Barrett, artists who connect with real Americans. Join us live for coverage that turns the music industry on its head. Real America's Voice, Real America's Music, the TPUSA All-American Halftime Show. To the factories, from small towns to city streets. This is the fight for the soul of our nation.
We're watching Democrats attack democracy. Do not be fooled.
The strength, the grit, the greatness of the American spirit, all right here.
The left wanted power, not peace, but there's a resistance rising. A generation saying enough, enough. We've tried it their way, and it failed.
The Steve Gruber Show with your host, Steve Gruber, starts right now.
Live from the campus of Hillsdale College in beautiful Hillsdale, Michigan, this is the Steve Gruber Show for Monday, February 9th of 2026. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve this morning. And here are three big things you need to know. 1. Today's show host Savannah Guthrie is pleading for her mother's safe return as the search for Nancy Guthrie continues and enters its second week. In a video posted on Saturday, Guthrie and her siblings offered to pay ransom for their 84-year-old mother, reported missing from her home in Arizona back on February 1st. The video comes after FBI and Arizona authorities announced they are investigating a new message on Friday, but still have no persons of interest in the case. 2. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says the U.S. wants a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia by early summer. Zelensky says Washington has proposed that delegations from both countries meet in the U.S. sometime next weekend. Ukraine will take part. And 3. U.S. Senator John Fetterman, Democrat, says he expects another partial government shutdown as Friday's deadline to fund the Department of Homeland Security approaches. The Pennsylvania senator made the comment on Fox's Sunday Morning Futures. The DHS operating off a 2-week stopgap funding bill. Lawmakers are negotiating reforms to immigration enforcement operations. We mentioned the demands from Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries on this here show last week. Does it appear that they are very close to reaching a deal? That is where we start hour one of the Steve Gruber Show. No, I didn't forget about the Super Bowl. Seattle wins. More on that in a moment. Thank you so much for joining us. Steve is back tomorrow on Tuesday. I'm here today on Monday. Scott Bertram here at Hillsdale College, where I serve as the general manager of the student radio station, WRFH, Also, lecturer in journalism and director of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. Frequent Steve Gruber Show fill-in guest. Always appreciate your time as you join us here for the program. You can find more from me on X at Scott Bertram, SCOTBERTRAM, and also scottbertram.com, where I try to corral all my media doings, including hosting other shows and podcasts like the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, which you can find where you get your great audio, no matter where that is. A great interview this past weekend with James Rosen, new biography, the second of 3 parts on Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. It's out tomorrow. We went in depth with him on the program over the weekend, so if you have the opportunity, check that out. In this hour of the Steve Gruber Show, Dan Lennington joins us from Wisconsin Law and Liberty Institute. They've been doing great work on DEI, or I should say against DEI programs. Interviewed by the New York Times 2 Sundays ago. We'll talk with Dan. Also, Haley Strack, William F. Buckley Fellow in Journalism at National Review. We'll hear from her in a few stories she's been following there at nationalreview.com. And yeah, I told you I'm not going to forget the Super Bowl, of course, the biggest television event of the entire year. Did I watch? Of course I watched. Did I have a party? Yes, I had a party. We have, I lost count how many people we have over for the Super Bowl party. It's 40 plus at this point. Easily 40 plus, because we have friends with big families. We have friends with 7 kids and friends with 6 kids and friends with 5 kids, and that starts to add up. And so we have the adults on one level and the very small children on the upper level watching things that are likely not Super Bowl related. Well, we know they're not Super Bowl related. And then the Super Bowl level down at the basement. Lots of food, lots of friends, lots of fun. The game helps bring things together, bring everyone together. Not the greatest game in the world yesterday. If you like kicking in the first half, man, that was the half for you. 3 field goals, 8 punts, I believe. A little bit more scoring in the second half, but the game never really in doubt for Seattle as the Seahawks win their 2nd Super Bowl in team history. And now football is dark for many months, and the eyes of a nation turn to the NCAA tournament and March Madness, and also spring training, baseball spring training right around the corner as well. People are going to talk today about the game, of course. Maybe about I heard less talk about commercials this year than any year in the past. And as we move into the future, we can't stop doing that. The commercials seem less and less important. The only one that, remember, lots of people in the house, lots of noise. The only one that absolutely jumped out and grabbed my attention was that Dunkin' Donuts one featuring the sitcom stars of the past, Jason Alexander and Steve Urkel. I know it's not his real name. Jennifer Aniston and Tom Brady and Ben Affleck. But I don't know what the plot was because I couldn't hear it. And I haven't gone back to watch some of them yet today. Less conversation about commercials in quite some time. More conversation about the Super Bowl halftime show. Did you watch Bad Bunny? Did you watch the TP USA halftime show? At my house, at my party, unanimous. Everybody wanted to watch the TP USA halftime show. Now, I admit we are not a representative cross-section of the country. But we are 50 people or so in Hillsdale, Michigan. We all flipped over at halftime to watch TP USA. I heard about the Bad Bunny halftime show. I guess Lady Gaga was there. I guess most of it was in Spanish. I didn't watch. You don't have to watch what you don't want to watch. And so we turned away. We watched the TP USA halftime show with Kid Rock headlining. And look, it's impossible not, if you watched, it's impossible not to notice that Kid Rock was, lip syncing the first song he performed. Although I'd also say that if you watched Bad Bunny, there's a pretty good chance he was lip syncing some of that show as well. So TP USA, they had, if I saw on YouTube, about 5.5, 6 million live streams just on YouTube alone. And that was distributed in a number of different places. So what that number is, I don't know. TP USA might have a number later on today about how many people tuned into their halftime show. It was nice that I mentioned at the party, hey, they don't have to worry about setting up or tearing down a stage at halftime. So we actually had a longer halftime show from TP USA. So that was nice. And I flipped over just after it ended. We missed the first New England possession of the second half, which was 3 and out to the punt. So didn't miss much. Here's what I'll say about halftime. So if you go back, 35 years or so at this point, there was another seismic shift in the way Super Bowl halftimes were planned, because Fox, at that point a fledgling network, decided to counter-program the Super Bowl halftime show, which was very stale and very boring. And Fox put an episode of In Living Color, a short episode of a comedy show called In Living Color, on at halftime against the Super Bowl halftime show. And it did well. And it scared the NFL into changing. I think the very next year is the year they had Michael Jackson do that big elaborate show. And so they changed. The question is, will TPUSA be successful enough perhaps to get the NFL to change once again? Historically, the halftime show is the highest rated part of the Super Bowl. You might not like the act. You might not want to watch. I'm just telling you, historically, the halftime show has been the highest rated, most viewed part of the Super Bowl. If that changes this year and the NFL sees an audience dip during halftime, well, that might be the thing that forces them to make changes in future Super Bowl halftime shows. I think we'll know that probably later on today. But that's the big thing to look for, I think. If you enjoyed it, fantastic. TPUSA probably got a good jolt out of it. But will it force the NFL to make changes? Let's see what the ratings were for the halftime of the Super Bowl, which is usually the most watched part of the entire game. More next. Scott Bertram in for Steve on the Steve.
This is a monumental moment in American culture. This Sunday, Real America's Voice and Real America's Music come together to do what the mainstream industry won't. Take the music back. Starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, we go live with exclusive pre-coverage of the Turning Point USA All-American Halftime Show, a patriotic alternative. For years, the left has weaponized the music industry, using it to push politics, erase values, and divide the country. That ends now. This All-American Halftime Show exists to celebrate American pride, traditional values, and artists who still stand with the heartland. Featuring Kid Rock, Brantley Gilbert, Lee Brice, and Gabby Barrett, artists who connect with real Americans. Join us live for coverage that turns the music industry on its head. Real America's Voice, Real America's Music, the TPUSA All-American Halftime Show. From powerhouse vocalist Natasha Owens, known for standout singles like Trump One and Somali Waltz, comes her brand new release, The Boss, released on Real America's Music. This is the direct response to Bruce Springsteen's recent release, The Streets of Minneapolis. While Springsteen once branded himself as a voice of the working class, The Boss gives a voice to everyday Americans and reminds listeners who truly shapes the future. The Real America's Voice audience has the power to move charts and shake the industry. Download it right now. Scan the QR code or search The Boss on iTunes. Push it up the charts. Make them notice.
Thank God you're not. I thank God you're not.
Hi, my name's Paul Foyer. I'm Foyer04 in the Getter Chat. I love rap for all the Getter, all the War Room Posse, and all of you guys. Love y'all. Bye. My name is Sandy Zeiss. Rap is the greatest for me because I live alone, and when I'm watching in the morning, have my coffee, I feel like I'm talking with family.
Howdy, Rap fams. It's Warbringer here. Love you all. Rap is the only place to get the truth, and this is the only way we're going to be able to restore our republic. Love you all. See you in the chat.
It's the Steve Gruber Show. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve this Monday morning all across the country and the great state of Michigan. Thanks so much for joining us. Find me on X at Scott Bertram, scottbertram.com. The show is out there too. SteveGruber.com or at Steve Gruber Show on X. It's pretty amazing that it took, I suppose, a combination of two things. Nicki Minaj and a brief CNN report on the enduring popularity of voter ID as an issue to force these legacy media operations to get their butts in gear and ask Democrats why they oppose and why they won't vote for something that 82% of the country supports, a majority of Democrats support, 72% of black support, I think it was 81% of Latinos support, voter ID law, showing ID before you can vote, proving that you are who you say you are before you cast a ballot. Because as we've talked about so many times on the show, and Steve has and others have, these measures have to be preventative. We had at least 15 known documented cases of illegal ballots being cast in Michigan in 2024. You can't get those back. You can't go and say, oh, this was the one that guy cast, that's illegal, take it out. You can't. It gets counted. That's it. These measures to prevent fraud in that matter have to be preventative in nature. Voter ID is a good way to do that. Americans believe that. And this has been an enduring truth. Polling going back at least a decade, more than a decade, says that this is essentially a 75-25 now, has increased in popularity to be an 82% issue, 82% in favor. So all of a sudden, thanks to Nicki Minaj saying something, thanks to a brief CNN report, legacy media reporters actually are asking Democrats on Sunday shows and elsewhere about why not voter ID? Why not voter ID? And they don't have a great explanation why, as you'll hear. We heard Chuck Schumer on Friday. We might hear that again later on today. Chuck Schumer's answer. Jamie Raskin, big Democrat, on MS Now on Saturday, asked about this voter ID issue. This is cut one.
The Act has nothing to do with voter ID. They keep saying it's a voter ID law. No, it's not a voter ID law, which just says you bring ID with you to the polls when you go vote, which exists in a lot of states. That's not what this is. This says you've got to prove that you're a U.S. citizen. So you start with your driver's license, but now you've got to show that your driver's license matches your birth certificate.
Okay, Jimmy, about the SAVE Act, which is looped into this talk about voter ID. But just like Chuck Schumer on Friday, or on Thursday, we played it on Friday, he gives the game away. Chuck Schumer said the same thing. He said, if you want to vote, they expect you to prove you're a U.S. citizen. Yes, this is the point. We expect you to prove that you are a U.S. citizen using documentation that virtually everyone in the country has and that you need if you want to get a job anywhere in the country, essentially. Yes. This is the point of the SAVE Act, an extension of the voter ID issue. Yes, it is. Hakeem Jeffries asked and then followed up on CNN. A follow-up question on CNN. What is this world coming to? Hakeem Jeffries on CNN Sunday asked about this voter ID cut 3.
I haven't said that they're wrong. We know that states are the ones who are empowered to conduct elections, and every state should be allowed to decide the best way to proceed to ensure that there's a free and fair election. Here in New York, there are, in fact, voter identification requirements. The question is that what Republicans are trying to do is to engage in clear and blatant voter suppression. They know that if there's a free and fair election in November, they're going to lose. In fact, Republicans have been losing every single election since Donald Trump was sworn in January of last year.
Not completely true, of course. And it also leads me to ask the question, does Hakeem Jeffries think that the 2024 election was not a free and fair election because Republicans won that one? That would have been a good follow-up question. That is not what Dana Bash decided to ask. She did follow up by saying, no, let's not talk about the SAVE Act. Let's talk about just the issue of voter ID, which 82% of Americans support. Hakeem Jeffries, why not vote for voter ID cut 4?
Well, first of all, every state is empowered to be able to make the decision on their own, and we completely and totally support that. What Donald Trump wants to do is try to nationalize the election. Translation, steal it. And we're not going to let it happen. We stopped them in terms of their gerrymandering efforts, where they were going to try to redraw congressional maps in red states throughout the nation, not expect Democrats to respond forcefully, and try to rig the midterms. They failed.
All right, Hakeem Jeffries not talking about the issue, although he admits Democrats gerrymandering their minds out here, including in Virginia, though the Virginia Supreme Court might have something to say about that. Adam Schiff on ABC with John Karl this week. You'll notice, asked directly about voter ID, the strategy here is to change the topic to talk about the SAVE Act, where they think they have a better argument. And then asked more directly about voter ID, it goes back to stealing elections and such. Adam Schiff of California on ABC's This Week tried the exact same thing. John Karl asked about voter ID. Adam Schiff talked about the SAVE Act. John Karl has to come back and say, no. What about voter ID specifically? Why not vote for voter ID, something voters and Americans find to be overwhelmingly in support of? Adam Schiff on ABC, Cut 5.
It's still going to be something, Jonathan. It's still going to be something that disenfranchises people that don't have the proper real ID, driver's license ID, that don't have the ID necessary to vote, even though they are citizens. This is another way to simply try to suppress the vote.
Suppress the vote, steal elections. This is what the argument boils down to for the left. And again, if we go back, the last time they warned about all this, one of the last times they warned about all this was in Georgia. The Georgia voting laws, we were warned Jim Crow 2.0, we were warned voter suppression, stealing elections, all sorts of things. And we know voter turnout up in Georgia since that law was passed. No one really talks about it anymore. Major League Baseball, which pulled the All-Star game out of the state of Georgia due to the passage of the law, came back, tail between the legs, didn't exactly apologize, but brought the game back. Same arguments used this time, and if enacted, we'll see the same results. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve. This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with this Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Most people know the biblical story of David, the shepherd boy who fought Goliath and became king. Well, Angel Studios has created a new animated film called David that tells the story of Israel's greatest king.
There's a light I've always followed when I'm looking for the way, when I'm searching for the answer, in the moments I'm afraid. There's a whisper in the wind, and a story in the sky, when I'm looking for a lantern to illuminate the night. If you want the secret of freedom and feeling alive, you gotta follow the light.
It's the Steve Gruber Show. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve on this Monday morning. Thanks so much for being alongside. We'll talk with Dan Lennington from the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty in just about 5 minutes or so. This portion of the Steve Gruber Show brought to you by the Wellness Company. Everybody knows the next medical crisis is just around the corner, whether it comes in the form of a crippling winter storm or a pandemic or something much more mundane like a tick bite. Well, you and your family need to be prepared. That's where the Wellness Company comes in. You know the Wellness Company. Their doctors, like Dr. Peter McCullough, are on with Steve all the time. The Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals that keep you safe and you can trust. Their line of prescription medical kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. Whether it's the medical emergency kit, the contagion kit, the first aid kit, or the travel kit, these prescription kits contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of the medications. Rest assured knowing that you have emergency antibiotics or antivirals and antiparasitics on hand to help keep you and your family safe. Go to twc.health/Gruber and order today. That's twc.health/Gruber. Gruber. Use the promo code Gruber there to save 10% at the wellness company, twc.health/Gruber. Speaking of healthcare, or as I guess the Democrats would, as we would say, Democrats say healthcare, we would put it in quotation marks, healthcare, abortion. Brief story here. Gavin Newsom posting on X yesterday. Louisiana is going to sue Gavin Newsom because he will not extradite a doctor to Louisiana for prosecution. And Gavin Newsom posting over the weekend, Louisiana plans to sue me because I won't extradite a doctor for providing an abortion. Go blank yourself, Gavin Newsom says. California will never help you criminalize healthcare. This is a case in which this doctor in California sent abortion pills to a man so he could coerce and trick his girlfriend into aborting a baby that she wanted to keep. Tried to trick her into taking these pills that a doctor in California mailed to a man in Louisiana. It's not health care, as Senator Bill Cassidy says. This is just straight up drug dealing, and Gavin Newsom wants to allow it to happen in his state. Scott Bertram in for Steve on The Steve Gruber Show.
Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with this Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Most people know the biblical story of David, the shepherd boy who fought Goliath and became king. Well, Angel Studios has created a new animated film called David that tells the story of Israel's greatest king.
There's a light I've always followed when I'm looking for the way, when I'm searching for the answer. In the moments I'm afraid, there's a whisper in the wind and a story in the sky. When I'm looking for a lantern to illuminate the night. If you want the secret of freedom and feeling alive, you gotta follow the light. Follow the light.
For those who love great animated classics like The Lion King and Prince of Egypt, David is an awe-inspiring animated musical that depicts David as a spirited boy who fought lions, giants, and even betrayal, depicting how one boy's faith could lead him to be king of Israel. David will be released in theaters just in time for Christmas on December 19th, but your family can get a head start by watching the prequel to the film, Young David, which is streaming exclusively right now on Angel. It's perfect for the entire family and has memorable music. So once you join the Angel Guild, you can start watching Young David right now and prepare the fam for the David film in theaters in December. And by joining the Guild, you'll guarantee 2 free tickets to see it. And it's a great value. Let's be honest, going to the movies isn't all that cheap. But if you're a member of the Angel Guild, not only do you get those 2 free tickets to David, but you'll now have access to every single film or TV series on Angel at your convenience anytime. So just go to angel.com/Rav and join there.
Hey folks, it's your friend John Rich. I co-founded Old Glory Bank because we heard too many stories about people getting canceled by their bank because they didn't agree with their politics. The government wanted to know where you shop. If you bought a Bible or you shopped at a sporting goods store, you're probably on a list. We created Old Glory Bank because America needed a bank that would protect their privacy and security. Exercising your constitutional rights is not a criminal activity, and neither is loving your country. At Old Glory Bank, we stand with you.
I'm a J6er. I spent 1,143 days in prison.
About a year in prison.
We were prosecuted, persecuted.
J6ers have been treated like terrorists.
And we need your help.
Stand in the Gap was founded to stand in the gap for J6ers working to rebuild their lives after being incarcerated.
For just $10 or more, you can help these patriots.
It's the Steve Gruber Show. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve on this Monday morning. Welcome to the week. Glad you're alongside. Find me on X at Scott Bertram, scottbertram.com. The show out there too, SteveGruber.com and at Steve Gruber Show on X. Dan Lennington joins us now, Managing Vice President, Deputy Counsel at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, will-law.org. Dan, thanks so much for joining us here on the Steve Gruber Show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you giving me the chance to talk about our programs here.
Yeah, Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. People might have seen the Institute featured in the New York Times, not yesterday, but one Sunday before that in an article about the fight against DEI programs. How did Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty become one of the standard bearers, flag bearers for this fight against DEI?
Yeah, well, we started in about 2021 with our Equality Under the Law initiative, which focused on the race-based programs that were just being perpetuated out of the Biden administration. Joe Biden, when he came in, he had some really massive legislative successes. He passed the American Rescue Plan Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. And all of these acts contained very specific race-based preferences and programs. We calculated that perhaps over $120 billion a year were being spent by the Biden administration to, quote, help certain races based solely on their race, assuming that if you had black skin, you were automatically disadvantaged, and that you were entitled to help for banking assistance, for small business loans, for scholarships, all sorts of a bevy of benefits. And those in the Trump administration now have been effectively turned off. And the federal government has been turned in from a proponent of DEI to an opponent of DEI. And now the fight is moving down to the states, cities, and large corporations that still perpetuate discriminatory DEI programs to supposedly benefit one group and but not benefit other groups.
I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago, and I honestly forget exactly who it was, but the point he was making was that this fight against DEI, the eradication of DEI in both public and private institutions across the country, is probably the most significant public policy shift in decades in terms of the way that government contracts are meted out, the way that the government treats Americans across the country, coast to coast. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. One of our big victories is called MAMCO versus the U.S. Department of Transportation, and we went against the Federal Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, which is the oldest and largest affirmative action program. And this doled out about $37 billion a year to minority contractors to build roads. Literally how we build roads in America. The federal law required that at least 10% of all money spent on road building had to be spent on minority contractors. And so roads, bridges, stripers, landscapers, everybody out there putting asphalt down, concrete down, all those went through a lens of discrimination. Also, that we're suing over the 8A program, which is another massive federal program that discriminates based on race. Basically, everything from buying aircraft carriers to paper clips, the federal government was using race as a factor about how they would source and supply those. So yes, we're hearing from our clients that small businesses are really taking notice, that there are a whole host of opportunities open to them right now that never were open to them, at least for the past 50 years.
Dan Lennington with us with the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. will-law.org is the website. So many DEI programs on our college campuses and universities across the country. I know that you guys have done work with race-based scholarships, specifically in Madison, but you also have mandatory DEI training for employees. You have universities, I know University of Illinois did this, and there are others that require DEI statements if you were going to be even considered for employment in those universities. What has Will done on campuses across the country?
Yes, we've sued over race-based scholarships is really the big category. We actually have a case pending that will be argued on Wednesday morning at the Wisconsin Supreme Court that is a scholarship for what they call minority undergraduates. Minority under our state law is defined as Black, Hispanic, and Native American, and Asian, but Asian is defined in Wisconsin as only individuals who are from Laos, Cambodia, or Vietnam. Everyone else is deemed not Asian according to the state of Wisconsin. And this just goes to show you that how they categorize people. They use these broad categories, and we're going to help quote, Asian students, or we're going to help this other group. It shows how discriminatory and illegal it is. And we've also sued the federal government over these types of programs too. But yes, students are left out of getting money for college because of the color of their skin, and that is illegal and immoral.
Dan, we've also seen organizations, entities across the country simply try to change the name of these programs. So they're not technically DEI, or they're not explicitly DEI programs, but they try to achieve the same goals. Are universities, small, government agencies, are they going to get away with simply changing the name of some of these programs?
No, you can't do that, and you can't just change the method. Anytime race is used, it's like putting a drop of poison in a glass of lemonade. You'd never drink the lemonade. Race is a poison if it's used in any way. A little bit of help for this group, a little bit of help for that group, that is illegal under federal law. And we'll come after companies that do that. We have gone after companies that have done that in universities and cities and states. Every time you think you're helping one person because of their membership in a racial group, you're hurting someone else because you're saying that other person is ineligible for that training, hiring, promotion, scholarship, business loan, business grant. Those are all out of bounds for you because of your ancestry, effectively. And that's illegal under federal law.
Dan, paraphrasing Justice Roberts, who said, the way to stop discriminating on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. As you mentioned, every time you think you're helping someone, you're actually discriminating against someone else. Thanks to the Supreme Court, recent Supreme Court case and the actions of Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty and others out there as well, are we perhaps closer than ever to reaching a point where we are stopping discrimination based on race?
Well, I shudder to think about it. Our federal government has temporarily sort of turned the ship around. But another administration could just turn it. President AOC, President Gavin Newsom could turn it right back the other way. So this victory may be temporary. And the people who are really proponents of DEI, their view is sort of, out of my cold, dead hands, you're going to tear this program. And we've heard this from big corporations. We've seen Northwestern Mutual here in Wisconsin is under EEOC investigation. Nike just got a big EEO investigation, lawsuit filed against them. A lot of these corporations are doing it, and they don't care what the consequences are. They think it's their right and duty to pick and choose what racial groups are, quote, underrepresented or need help. And they're going to have to face the liability in the courtroom, and they're going to have to face the jury eventually.
You can read this New York Times story from the Sunday edition 2 Sundays ago, and also go to will-law.org for more information about what the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty is doing in this fight against DEI. Dan Lettington, who is Managing Vice President, Deputy Counsel at Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. Thanks so much for joining us this morning on the Steve Gruber Show.
Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate the chance.
Thank you. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve here on the Steve Gruber Show.
Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with this Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Most people know the biblical story of David, the shepherd boy who fought Goliath and became king. Well, Angel Studios has created a new animated film called David that tells the story of Israel's greatest king.
There's a light I've always followed when I'm looking for the way, when I'm searching for the answer. In the moments I'm afraid, there's a whisper in the wind and a story in the sky. When I'm looking for a lantern to illuminate the night. If you want the secret of freedom and feeling alive, you gotta follow the light. Follow the light.
For those who love great animated classics like The Lion King and Prince of Egypt, David is an awe-inspiring animated musical that depicts David as a spirited boy who fought lions, giants, and even betrayal, depicting how one boy's faith could lead him to be king of Israel. David will be released in theaters just in time for Christmas on December 19th. But your family can get a head start by watching the prequel to the film, Young David, which is streaming exclusively right now on Angel. It's perfect for the entire family and has memorable music. So once you join the Angel Guild, you can start watching Young David right now and prepare the fam for the David film in theaters in December. And by joining the Guild, you'll guarantee 2 free tickets to see it. And it's a great value. Let's be honest, going to the movies isn't all that cheap. But if you're a member of the Angel Guild, not only do you get those 2 free tickets to David, but you'll now have access to every single film or TV series on Angel at your convenience anytime. So just go to angel.com/Rav and join there.
Hey folks, it's your friend John Rich. I co-founded Old Glory Bank because we heard too many stories about people getting canceled by their bank because they didn't agree with their politics. The government wanted to know where you shop. If you bought a Bible or you shopped at a sporting goods store, you're probably on a list. We created Old Glory Bank because America needed a bank that would protect their privacy and security. Exercising your constitutional rights is not a criminal activity, and neither is loving your country. At Old Glory Bank, we stand with you.
I'm a J6er. I spent 1,143 days in prison.
About a year in prison.
We were prosecuted, persecuted.
J6ers have been treated like terrorists.
And we need your help.
Stand in the Gap was founded to stand in the gap for J6ers working to rebuild their lives after being incarcerated.
For just $10 or more, you can help these patriots.
It's the Steve Gruber Show. Scott Bertram sitting in for Steve. Thanks so much for joining us on this Monday morning. Haley Strack is with us, too. She is staff writer at National Review. Read her writing at nationalreview.com. Haley, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
You covered for National Review something called the Run Gen Z conference a couple of weeks ago. I will be honest, before reading it in your writings, I had not heard of the Run Gen Z conference, but I am not Gen Z, so perhaps not a surprise. Tell us what's this all about? What was happening?
Yeah, definitely. Essentially, it's a conference for up-and-coming GOP candidates for Gen Z. And now they're kind of phasing out into their next era as Gen Z grows up. So they're transitioning to be just a voice for young people who want to get involved in politics. So these are people from across the country who aren't running for like state office yet, but who are interested in local office. We had sheriffs there, we had state reps, we had county commissioners, and they're just a bunch of very interested Gen Zers. And when I got there, you have presumptions about Gen Z, especially on the right these days. We hear very often that Gen Z is in complete shambles. And I was proud to say, at least in our reporting for National Review, we found the exact opposite.
One thing you found, the kids love Marco. A little video and write-up at nationalreview.com. President Trump was actually asked about this in the NBC interview. Vance or Rubio, who's going to be top of the ticket in 28? And Trump smartly said, well, a long way to go until then. He's not picking sides quite yet. What did Gen Z have to say about Marco Rubio, the man who's wearing 12 hats at any given time inside the Trump administration?
Yeah, I mean, Trump's not picking sides yet, but the kids are, and they love Marco. It was insane. Another, sort of pre-notion that I had was that the kids would love Vance so much more. He, he's all over the internet in memes. He's been a favorite of young conservatives for a while now. He's kind of been their voice in this fight. And they just love Marco. Again, I will say this is a pretty select group of very politically involved individuals, but these are also the people who are talking to their Gen Z constituents in local districts. And they probably know more than you or I about the state of Gen Z around the country. I mean, I'm in Washington, D.C., so I'm inside the Beltway. But I will say Marco, I think, is a favorite because he is the adult in the room and doesn't have to say it. And I think something that conservatives are rightly noticing as we face an affordability crisis that no one seems to be able to fix, even Donald Trump. And as we near the decade of Trump, I think conservatives are really excited to just have an adult who gets stuff done. You saw Marco Rubio at his recent hearing on Venezuela, And he doesn't explain himself. He's very calm. He's very confident. He knows what he's doing. He projects that confidence like you wouldn't believe. And I think that Gen Z notices that. The other really great quality about Marco is that he's memeable without being a butt of a joke. So like you mentioned, he's wearing about 15 different hats in the Trump admin right now. I think he just stepped down from one of them, which was the Library of Congress, or the archivist. But I think, yeah, Marco wears so many hats, and he is so funny because he, again, doesn't really engage necessarily in the internet memes that Vance kind of relishes in and loves.
Haley Strack with us, staff writer at National Review, nationalreview.com. You mentioned a decade of Trump. And so, for Gen Z, they have lived most of their life, or most of their politically aware life. They've never had a time without Donald Trump being prominent inside the Republican Party and conservative politics. So as Donald Trump exits the scene in a couple of years, what are these Gen Z conservatives looking for in the next standard bearer for the party, for conservatives?
I think you can kind of see this in the Marco-Vance divide. I think they want someone who is loud and carries on Trump's legacy of actually doing things. This is something Gen Z's been pretty impressed with. Even Gen Zers and conservatives who aren't necessarily super happy with a foreign policy where America is going into other countries and trying to help them, or trying to maybe intervene in some disputes, whether it be in Ukraine or in Israel. But they really love what Trump did in Iran. They really love what Trump did in Venezuela because, and this might sound shallow, but because it was cool. It showed American dominance. And that's another thing that Marco just gets right consistently. So I think they're looking for someone who can definitely project strength. And that's something President Trump has done. That's something that Marco would carry on over. But they're also looking for someone who, as you mentioned, this is a decade of Trump. We've never known another super prominent politician. I don't know that Gen Z really wants someone who's as brash, because no one's going to be as brash and successful in it as Donald Trump will be. There will be no Trump again. So now what we take is his best qualities, which is his ability to get stuff done and be funny while doing it. And I think that we see where it goes from there. But yeah, I think that's why Marco stands out, especially. He carries on those great qualities.
We talked to our colleague Dan McLaughlin last week. He wrote a piece about what's next for Ron DeSantis in Florida, term limited out. What's he going to do? Was there much discussion about Ron DeSantis at the Gen Z conference? Did they have thoughts? Was the name even mentioned in passing at this Gen Z conference?
It was in Florida, so it was mentioned in passing, but certainly not as a Republican hopeful, not even on the ticket. And again, these are a select group of younger conservatives, but the fact that they are very politically inclined and not really tuned into a potential DeSantis run should tell you a lot. DeSantis and Youngkin were two names not mentioned, and I was surprised by that.
I was just about to ask about Youngkin, though we only have about 30 seconds. Youngkin seems exactly the guy that perhaps, and I like him, but seems like a guy that is not going to capture the imagination of Gen Z, despite the fact he's an extremely successful one-term governor who perhaps wishes to have a more national profile. It seems hard for Glenn Youngkin to capture the hearts and minds of conservative youth.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I just don't think he has the same gusto. He doesn't have the same track record. I think they're both in their pre-Marco era. And I think that once they get to where he's at right now, they'll be very appealing candidates to Gen Z, but just not yet.
All right, Haley Strack, staff writer over at National Review, nationalreview.com. Also check her at X as well, at Strack Haley. Just reverse the name. Haley, thanks so much for joining us this morning on The Steve Gruber Show.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Haley Strack with us. Scott Bertram with you here on The Steve Gruber Show. More in just a moment.
Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with this Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Most people know the biblical story of David, the shepherd boy who fought Goliath and became king. Well, Angel Studios has created a new animated film called David that tells the story of Israel's greatest king.
always followed when I'm looking for the way, when I'm searching for the answer. In the moments I'm afraid, there's a whisper in the wind and a story in the sky. When I'm looking for a lantern to illuminate the night. If you want the secret of freedom and feeling alive, you gotta follow the light. Follow the light.
For those who love great animated classics like The Lion King and Prince of Egypt, David is an awe-inspiring animated musical that depicts David as a spirited boy who fought lions, giants, and even betrayal, depicting how one boy's faith could lead him to be king of Israel. David will be released in theaters just in time for Christmas on December 19th, but your family can get a head start by watching the prequel to the film, Young David, which is streaming exclusively right now on Angel. It's perfect for the entire family and has memorable music. So once you join the Angel Guild, you can start watching Young David right now and prepare the fam for the David film in theaters in December. And by joining the Guild, you'll guarantee 2 free tickets to see it. And it's a great value. Let's be honest, going to the movies isn't all that cheap. But if you're a member of the Angel Guild, not only do you get those 2 free tickets to David, but you'll now have access to every single film or TV series on Angel at your convenience anytime. So just go to angel.com/Rav and join there.
Hey folks, it's your friend John Rich. I co-founded Old Glory Bank because we heard too many stories about people getting canceled by their bank because they didn't agree with their politics. The government wanted to know where you shopped. If you bought a Bible or you shopped at a sporting goods store, you're probably on a list. We created Old Glory Bank because America needed a bank that would protect their privacy and security.
And we seem to have lost connection with Scott Bertram right now from Hillsdale College. We'll try to get him reconnected here before the top of the next hour. It's a busy couple of hours coming up. Corinne Clifford, independent journalist from the White House Press Corps. She's official spokesperson at sat123.com. What we also got coming up later on in the second hour coming up, James Bradley, author of Precious Freedom. Let's try that again. Precious Freedom, a novel, U.S.-Iran tensions amid crucial nuclear talks coming up in Oman. Comedian Mark Malkoff is coming up in the 7 o'clock hour as well. In the 8 o'clock hour, we got another busy hour. Josh Finley, director of the Texas Public Policy Foundation's National Election Protection Project.
I got him, Brock.
And Ingrid Jacques from USA Today. She's columnist. Voters say Trump is worse than Biden, but don't write him off
Brock,
yet.
I got him.
Okay. Well, Scott will be talking about that coming up in the last 2 hours of the Steve Gruber Show.
Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with this Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Most people know the biblical story of David, the shepherd boy who fought Goliath and became king. Well, Angel Studios has created a new animated film called David that tells the story of Israel's greatest king.
There's a light I've always followed when I'm looking for the way, when I'm searching for the answer. In the moments I'm afraid, there's a whisper in the wind and a story in the sky. When I'm looking for a lantern to illuminate the night. If you want the secret of freedom and feeling alive, you gotta follow the light. Follow the light.
For those who love great animated classics like The Lion King and Prince of Egypt, David is an awe-inspiring animated